We set these goals for ourselves and we think that we have to earn a certain number of sales that first year without recognizing that if you just grow $300,000 in sales or $2.5 million in sales, that is a step forward than where you were before, and that's the actual progress you're looking for. So I started focusing on this micro process, and over time, as I got good at all of these micro items, I started to feel my value go up. Now I feel better about myself. Now I have more confidence. I know I'm going the right direction because now I'm doing all these things that I wasn't doing, and then momentum kicks.
Yeah.
And then once the momentum kicks, you start to see things coming at you without having to put in such high intentional efforts and focus into these things, because you've set up the process of what the daily life looks like, which is what Alex Hormozi challenges. But at the essence, it's the process of doing the work. You have to create boundaries for how you're going to go out and achieve those things. And then you have to be disciplined. It's the key.
Welcome to the REimagined podcast.
All right, guys, welcome to the REimagined podcast. We were just catching up. I got a special one today. This one hits close to home, not only because he is from the Valley. Our first interaction was actually I sold him a house here. But for some of you guys that listen to the podcast, you know I lost my father to addiction, my uncle to addiction, family all comes from addicts. So anyhow, I'm going to steal one of his intro lines because he is a national public speaker. And he's opened up a lot of his speeches with a vision. The vision is you're driving down literally Fresno, probably downtown Fresno, and you see a young gentleman, or he called almost a kid, on freeway, highway. You get it off on the highway and you turn the road, and there's a kid sitting on the curb, and you're kind of looking at him, and then you see him pull something out of his pocket and go down to the gutter water, and he's filling up, and I'm not used to this, and I'm chopping up the story, but to do heroin. And that image we're going to recapture because it's so powerful. It's really touched me since I've been studying my friend here today, but went from the start of even before that young gentleman that he'll get into was, cover a BMX magazine, to down a path that led him on that curb to, not going to give away all the story, but to finding himself, going to the Olympics, becoming an entrepreneur that he always was, but maybe didn't believe in. And just a good friend that our relationship was back in like 2016, I think. But I got Tony Hoffman here today. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks, Nico. I appreciate it. Yeah. And you know what's, I haven't used that opening line in a long time, but
Really?
that one's deep. That one has really changed a lot of people's hearts and minds.
Dude, it was so powerful to me.
Law enforcement, nurses, doctors that I've spoken to all over the country. I mean, that's the one that gets them. Mm-hmm. We have a preconceived idea of the person that's sleeping on the street, the person that's using dope in the Tenderloin or Skid Row or downtown Fresno. And those belief systems are built on ideas that somebody gave us. We don't have any personal interaction with these people. We don't know what their stories are, and we don't know what their actual potential could be because we don't know who they are. We just take this belief, this idea that was given to us, and then we just use that to construct a reality in which we think they should be operating in. And it's completely built on this false idea because you don't actually know them. You don't actually know their childhood, their story was. We were talking about that earlier with one of your people. If you get to know some of these people, a lot of why they are where they are makes sense. And you find out a lot of these people are actually very smart, intelligent, caring, giving people, but somewhere along the line in their situation, things went a direction that they most likely didn't want to go, and then they don't know how to get out.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that probably pretty deeply, but Tony and I met through one of my front desk executives and helped them buy a house in Fresno. At that time, just a preference, kind of our introduction, and we were about to talk about this, and then you said, pause, let's get this on film. Dude, we kind of started our entrepreneur journey, arguably, I think people or individuals start at a very young age that they don't even know it started, but you were bringing up and saying, with the successful businesses that you've created, and I'm so proud of you for, you were saying like, yeah, man, like when we met, I'm kind of there now. And I'm like, no, dude, like we're at the same spot. Like back in 2016, 17, when you started your speaking career was kind of when I started these companies, as you know, because I hired your good friend kind of starting the brokerage. And there's really no measure, but I just see the growth you and I have both have had and where we're at today. And I'm trying to be better of enjoying the moment, and then also recognizing that we can be happy of what we did, right? So I just want to applaud you for that. But take us real quick back to for the guests real quick. So give us a little intro of your childhood to the accomplishments you made, and then ultimately, you know, this tagline, which I love, and I also don't like it, right? And it you know, a lot of your taglines through your podcasts, your public speaking, your books, and I get it, right? It's from prison to the Olympics. Yeah. But when I see you as you're a friend, I just see a very, known successful kid who had potential, obviously, made mistakes, which I want to touch on, and then just became true to himself, and now just kicks ass, dude. Like you're just a born entrepreneur that's chasing your dream.
Yeah, and I mean at the essence, that is it. When we talk about virality and attention, because that's what life is all about nowadays, it seems like, is attention, and how long can you hold somebody's attention. From prison to the Olympics is at least a hook that somebody will say, huh? Then there's also nobody that's ever done that beside myself. And so I'm able to use that as more of a viral moment that hooks people into, okay, I want to listen to this guy's story. But at the essence is really just, I was a person that got lost. Yeah. And in getting lost, I was lucky enough to find myself again and create some purpose through all of the pain and struggles that I went through, and then make a decision that I was going to harness kind of that entrepreneurism in a way that was self-empowering, but also empowering others along the way. And then it seemed like everything that I had from the beginning just came together in this package, or this light bulb. It was like, oh, this is how I was supposed to be using it the entire time. But the reason it got so sideways was when I was young, starting in my teenage years, I really started struggling with my mental health. And I was with my mom and dad last night, and we were talking a lot about addiction and stuff. And my dad says it's really hard for me to not feel like this is my fault. And
this was due to the BMX, like pedestal that you were on?
No, this is before BMX, right? Wow. Like I'm 11, 12, 13 years old. I find a bike at 12. Mm-hmm. But somewhere around 7th grade, and I tell kids this, I started showing up to Clark Intermediate, and I had this overwhelming idea that I needed to kill myself. And it was so confusing to me.
Where'd the pressure come from?
This is what I explained. I don't know where it was coming from. It was just this idea. Well, you dive deeper into the mental illness side of things, and you get around people that have strong suicidal ideation that never leaves, right? And we understand there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. And there are individuals that for some reason their brains tell them, you need to kill yourself. And there's this strong hatred of self. Well, I started to build this hatred for self that wasn't to the degree that maybe of some of these individuals I've met with that have not been able to shed the suicidal ideation. But around 12, I didn't want to be better than anybody. That was a very hard thing for me, was being better than people at sports, and being the athlete that every coach told was going to go to the big leagues or needed to be the leader of the team. Because really, I played sports because that's what we did in Clovis. And that's a hard concept when I tell people around the country, like, when you come to Clovis, you play sports because that's what we do. Like, you got Josh Allen, you've got the Carr brothers, you got Tyler Klutz, you got Courtney Alexander, you got people that have, all these people that have gone to these leagues, right? Back-to-back national baseball champions at Clovis High School. Like, we just play sports. Well, when I started playing sports, I just found out that I was better than everybody every time I played a different sport. I didn't like that, because I just wanted to have fun, just wanted to be normal. Then I started showing up to school, and I had this overwhelming anxiety that I didn't know was anxiety at that time. It took me 20 years after middle school to sit down with a therapist and be like, Tony, you got social anxiety. Wow. You don't like being around a lot of people because it makes you anxious. And so then you didn't understand what it was, so you'd start isolating away from people. And that isolation was really basically lowering your brain vibration. And then the depression starts, and then you have trouble with self-acceptance. You don't want to be good at sports. You want to be like everybody else. And you're in this shell with a brain that's not developed. Parents are workaholics. They're 14-hour work days, getting up at 5, out the door at 6, and coming home at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, rushing dinner. And you don't have the answers that you're looking for, but you have this conversation in a young teenage mind about what these negative emotions mean, about all of these things you hate about yourself and wanting to be normal. And so you're trying to find this stability within yourself that you can't find and you can't create. And because you can't find it, because you can't create it, you start to think, I need to kill myself because I can't stop the misery.
Right.
And it's weird because we look at people, we think, oh man, they got it all together.
Yeah.
They're so successful. They got a nice house, a nice car. Their family looks great. Well, my family is great. Mother and father, awesome. Married 48 years in November, still flirt with each other, worked in the same office for 40 years. Like, they've had a great marriage. But the one thing that they couldn't control was the psychology of my own reality. Right? They could give me the rules and parameters for life, but they couldn't control the internal psychology of myself. And so right around my teenage years, it was very clear that something was different about my emotions compared to the people that I was going to school with or what I felt.
Yeah.
And that carried through high school.
Right.
The only thing that kept me upright was sports. What I really needed was a stronger connection in a safe space where I could talk about what I was experiencing and the person knew what I was talking about. I had expressed some things to my mom, but my mom and my dad are not super emotional creatures, right? Communication wasn't a big thing in our household. It was get up, be disciplined, structure, sacrifice, invest, don't overspend, these really good parameters to survive in the physical realm. Yeah, you know what I mean? My dad's an amazing provider.
Yeah.
Parents are great parents, but there was an emotional realm to the world that I needed that my brother didn't.
Yeah.
And so bikes helped keep me up. What was missing was the conversation piece where I could say, why am I having these thoughts of killing myself? What is this feeling that I'm having where I don't want to be around people and I want to spend time by myself? And then they could say, this is what we should do with these thoughts. This is what we should do with these feelings. This is how we cope with this type of experience. And then I would feel more normal, right? Oh, you know what I'm talking about? Well, yeah, everybody's going to experience anxiety and everybody's going to get rejected growing up. But what you tell yourself about that rejection is more important than the rejection itself, because how you define the rejection is what you're going to use to respond to every form of rejection moving forward. So if you create a self-limiting response to the rejection, well, then moving forward, every time you get rejected, the only thing you're telling yourself is, see, nobody was going to like you. You learned that the last time, remember? See, you can't trust people. You learned that the last time. Well, then you start going into this self-deprecating process where you just go deeper and deeper into this dark hole of self-limitation. And that's really what was happening through high school. But what's crazy, because people saw me and the projection going up.
The outside appearance, yeah.
Because I'm on the cover of the magazine by 18.
Yeah, for BMX.
For BMX. Yeah. When the reality was, at that point,
you're probably the deepest.
I was at the deepest level, and that was right before I decided that I was going to start using drugs.
Wow. So we're gonna get into that and then what happens after that. But there's two things in here in the beginning of childhood. One, and this has probably never been talked about because you said it was from your dad yesterday, but how do you even respond to your dad apologizing for not being able to be aware of these emotions, right? Because I think of that as a parent now, hopefully I'm seeing signs of it, but like you said, dude, we're grinding, and are we educated to read mental health? And is our kids communicating to us? Because like you said, and what you recognize later that I've studied on, you're an introvert, right? So that can even be probably towards your parents a little bit. Obviously, friends you're close with myself and some others, you can carry conversations all day, but all strangers, it's I'm not going to go out of my way to have a conversation. So the same thing maybe applies with the parents. So that's one thing. And then two, I know how many lives you have changed, and it gives me the chills just thinking about it, right? This guy's traveling 260 days out of the year. We're going to get into that. speaking to schools, national platforms, adults, children, middle-aged, and all the above. But, now with you changing those individuals' lives and speaking a lot of schools, so there's one thing of like, how do you reply to your dad? And two, these kids that are having similar thoughts, what is your advice? Because I've actually never been to like the school speech that you've done, but I've seen your TED Talks, I've seen your podcasts. So I kind of like to know that just for the audience of like, while we're in this moment that you're explaining mental health as a child.
Yeah. So when it comes to my dad, I've had to do a lot of work on myself and recognize that if I'm going to get to a place of absolute peace or serenity, and that is where I'm okay with the moment, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, there is an absolute necessity of me releasing any type of resentment. And resentment is simply just blaming someone else or something for something, and you harness that as a victim. Yeah. This has put me in a position where I lack power. When my dad says sorry, I've already released that.
Yeah. So you're saying though, and I don't know if this is too much, but he told me, guys, and this is what I respect about you so much. He said, "Don't be afraid to ask me any question."
Yeah.
Which I love about you, dude. So thanks for saying that before we came on. But so there is something he could have done different if you're
Sure.
forgiving him.
Sure.
So I see that as a father who is a workaholic. My family's addicts. I've recognized and accepted. Now what I'm doing with it, I don't know. We can talk about later. But my addiction in my family, my dad chose alcohol, my uncle chose drugs. Mine is work, right? And I probably at one point going to have to recognize, similar to what I'm getting into with your father, is like he probably worked too much and wasn't there to see the signs of my kid is mentally struggling. Yes. Would you agree to that?
I had a huge breakthrough in therapy 2018. I'd been in therapy for like 8 years at this time. It took me 8 years to get to this moment. We just started talking, and I love basketball. Basketball is my thing. BMX isn't even my favorite sport. It's basketball. And we got to this moment and it literally broke me down. I don't cry much. But I got to this spot that I was so vulnerable inside and I just started crying. And it was about these moments I had when I was playing basketball and my dad would say, I promise you I'm going to come and watch you play tomorrow. And I would be so excited at the idea that my dad was going to come and watch me play. And I would look to the gym entry, at Clark, and I would have this internal conversation with myself as a young boy, come on, Dad. Come on, Dad, I know you're going to make it today. I know you're going to make it today because you promised me. And he didn't make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were district champions and I walked to the gym that night by myself. It was awarded district championship. Everybody's parents are there. And it's like I'm walking through this world so alone, so confused already with my own mental health and how I was feeling about myself. And my dad was my hero. It wasn't my mom, it was my dad. And I believe there's a hero dynamic in every house and you don't get to choose who that hero is. My father was my hero. He can listen to this part because I tell this story and I relive it for kids the way I felt it in therapy. And my father showing up could have made a difference. Him not being there was the final piece that I needed to solidify a belief system that there was something wrong with me and I was broken and I was not going to be capable of doing anything special. Because if my father didn't care enough to come and watch me play basketball, which was my dream, then why should I care about myself? And then I felt like I'm in a world all alone. I've defined it as a young boy who has to go in a boxing ring, doesn't want to be in the boxing ring, and then he's fighting an opponent that is more skilled, more prepared, and is literally getting the shit kicked out of him. And the bell will ring between the rounds, and I turn around with my head down, and I go and sit down on this chair, and I look across at my opponent, and they've got an entire team giving him water, telling him things, and watch out for the jab, and watch out for this. And I sit by myself, and I wait for them to tell me to get back up, and I don't even want to get back up and go back in the ring and fight, and I don't even know what I'm doing because nobody's there. It's what it felt like for me. And
it's not a good feeling.
No. And
I'm going to pause you real quick. Like, you can see my eyes watering because that hits home. I played basketball and I wrestled. My dad never made many games, but what's more, I guess, traumatizing to me that I've never experienced until like now was Dude, the amount of memories, I don't really remember them from basketball because my mom was always there. My brother was there rooting me on. But it was sitting at home. I remember, dude, I had a window seal. My window seal was in front of the house, and it had a little cushion on it when I was a kid, just staring out the window, waiting for my dad to come home from what I thought was work, but it was the bars, to see if he was going to make it home that night. I mean, alive, right? There's multiple car crashes from drunk driving, 4 DUIs. And this is a successful attorney. So from, again, what we talked about in the beginning, this outside appearance, just like with you, like you're on a cover of a magazine at 18 for BMX. Yeah. You're a stud athlete. You're good looking. You know, from the outside appearance, everyone says, "Man, this guy looks great."
Yeah. Why are you worried?
Yeah.
Why are you? What do you mean? What do you got to worry
Clovis,
about,
bro? Like,
but those are things I can't control the psychology
Yeah.
of how my brain operates.
Right.
But I can learn over time how to create disciplined parameters
Right.
of response systems. But it's
tough when you're so young. So
Well,
what
you
do
can't.
what do you tell these kids though? Like, what would you have done differently?
So number one thing is you've got to find a safe space. You have to find an adult to talk to, because the adult is the one that can take experience
Yeah.
and then put you in a box.
Could it be beyond your own, like, father, mother?
It has to be sometimes. It has to be
Yeah, because they're not
sometimes.
available.
They're not available.
In your and I's instance, like, our moms were available.
But my
maybe-
mom's not my hero.
Yeah.
She doesn't speak life to me. She can't take life away from me. My mom could speak poorly of me, and I'm whatever. She could speak great of me, and I'd be like, thanks, Mom. My dad, though, you know, I'm 40 years old. When my dad says I love you, I feel like a little kid.
Yeah.
And we say that now. I was at Avenel State Prison the first time I heard my dad say I love you.
Wow.
And so it's like that little kid in me doesn't ever change. But some people don't have parents that they can actually sit down and talk to. And so the encouragement is, don't do this alone. Because the science says before the prefrontal cortex is developed, which is around 21 years old for most people, 25 for males, 75% of the decisions a kid makes are based on their feelings. The other 25% are on the parameters their environment provides them. And so those parameters really are, you got to get up and go to school. You got to be on time to class. You got to study for your test. The rest of their decisions, what color clothes they want to wear, what brand they want to wear, what car they want to drive, who the friends they want to have, those are all simply based on feelings, which means all they're doing is trying to create an environment where their feelings are more often good than they are bad. So when you have kids that are by themselves, you have to think, you can't do this alone. Somebody has to provide the rules of the unseen world to you. You've got to find a safe space where you can sit down and divulge that stuff. That's why when I speak to parents, I say, we have to be the place that our young individuals come to for all types of conversations. Sure, we want to have strictness or rules or boundaries. But those boundaries, if they go too far, well, then they don't want to open up to you about the unseen world.
There's no trust or comfort there.
There's no trust or comfort.
Yeah.
And if they feel that they're going to experience shame or judgment based on an experience that maybe they can't control like me, it's just their internal psychology of how they think and feel the world, well, then they either do it alone or they go to a friend who also does not have the experience because of their age. And what's their friend say? The same shit mine did. Get over it, Hoff. Let it go. And I don't know how to let it go. I don't know how to get over it. I'm not like you. My psychology and how I process life doesn't just easily walk away from things and let it go. And so then I feel like, what's wrong with me? Then you start to isolate away from people, and then you start to see those behavior shifts. So it's like parents have to create those safe, vulnerable environments, and kids, if they don't have it at home, have to find it at school.
See, that's super tough, man. And you're probably going to experience it soon. But like having 2 kids, 5 and 3 now, I was raised by a 100% Italian family that's all about strict rules and manners, right? And Fresno, there's a lot of Armenians and Italians, and they operate the same way. But also, too, like where I'm really supported by my wife is she is a believer, exactly how you're describing it, where I want her kids comfortable to tell us anything and everything. But then on my other side is like, I get that, like you want to be the cool parent, but there also has to be, you know, parameters. Like it's like life, right? There's always a balance, right? Of like, you're trying to get the kid comfortable enough. I'm just thinking back to my high school days and really mentally taking in the percentages that you just gave us, which is mind boggling. But like, dude, like for me, the environment was huge, right? So when people sagged pants, we sagged pants. When people got earrings, we got earrings. When people got
Pagers.
What's that?
Pagers. I don't know if you dude, I wanted a pager so bad.
Dude, ours was the flip phones, the Razor
Yep.
flip phones, and then started coming in every color, right? And when green came out, everyone went wild. But then the environment to where we're leading with addiction was, first it was like hookah, then it was dipping, then it was alcohol, then it got into, as later in high school, it was like painkillers during school. Yep. And then it was funny because this guy, was drooling on the, desk in front of us. Yep. And it was like, are those kids cool? Like, is that group you want to be in? Or like, luckily for me, and maybe for you too, like we were part of sports, like, and the sport athletes typically hung out with each other and they were into, working out, and you were so busy with practices. So it sounds like for you and I both, we stayed away from a lot of that. But then when was that moment? So you worked up to this, basketball, BMX, you're on the BMX magazine, and we'll get into like that whole outside presence. I don't want to get into that yet, but what was that transition of, deciding to use drugs, right? Because I've never experienced that, and I've actually been scared to ask you. Yeah. So I want to admit that. Sure. And we've been friends for almost, a long time. And that's maybe a learning lesson for today, and why maybe God put us together again and have this conversation and come on my podcast, which I really appreciate. You're a busy man. But like, dude, like I just didn't have the courage to like talk about your past. Like, and it's a tough one. Like, I feel like if someone goes through a trauma, just like people probably don't want to ask me about my dad dying, right? Same thing with you. Like, and you're a public speaker, so you think that people on the outside would be like, "Well, this guy is open book, right?"
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
dude, I'm a little scared. Like,
yeah,
what made you choose to?
And you're not alone in that.
Yeah,
I mean, even the BMX community that I came back to, I'm getting ready to go on a big podcast in a couple months, and his brother is actually somebody I raced, Small World,
No
and
way.
so he's coming on, and he's like, "Bro, there's so many questions I want to ask you that I was afraid to ask you about when you came back to the sport." I think it's just normal, especially with like the prison part, and then there's like, what's
you don't know
too
if it's
far with
sensitive,
the guy,
right? They talk about triggers and
sure. And you don't want to offend somebody, right?
Yeah.
Like if I ask somebody, am I going to offend him? No, the reality is like, that's why I say, ask me anything, because I've literally spent so much time thinking about things, healing from things, trying to better understand things, mostly from the position, not only for self, peace, and serenity, but to help others, better understand people like myself who struggle with addiction and mental health. And then obviously that can give them tools to manage their own young people that they're raising or their loved ones that they're involved with. And so right at my senior year, I don't want to race BMX. You make $10,000 to $15,000 a year, which is jack shit for money. We can go to McDonald's right now and get a job that pays more.
Make it more.
I'm socially anxious, introverted, and I'm building computer networks in my bedroom. 7 computers and a laptop. I don't even go to my Cisco class in my senior year in high school because I got 168%. I show up like once a week and bang out these tests. I'm on my way to having my CCNA before I even graduate high school. Microsoft Certified Professional, A+ certificate. Like, I'm a guru when it comes to building networks. My dream is to go manage a corporate computer networking system where I can lock myself in a closet. If you want to talk to me, send me an email, which is appropriate for somebody that has social anxiety. And my aunt knew this guy who was starting a wireless internet company in San Diego, and he needed a network administrator. She says, "You got to talk to my nephew. This kid's a guru." So he talks to me. I go down to Rancho Santa Fe, San Diego, right by Scripps. Got a big $1 million house, a big office with a bunch of servers in it. And I'm thinking, yo, this is it. He's got the S500 Benz, Brabus package. I'm like, this is my path. This is it. And he hired me. It was $120,000 in 2002, but he was going to wait to start the company until I got out of high school. So I had several months before I was going to transition down to San Diego, and BMX was what was holding me up. Well, when I got rid of BMX, because I had so much emotional turmoil within myself, I couldn't sit still. I couldn't sit at home like I sit at home like now without watching TV or driving a car with no music on, or just be with myself. being with myself was the most miserable thing in the world.
Yeah.
So what did I do?
It was uncomfortable because you went into those negative thoughts?
Yes, and I was overwhelmed with that. Starting at 12, it's literally, what I explain to people is, it was like my finger was stuck in an electrical socket, and I was trying to figure out how to pull it out. The electrical socket was just how my emotions felt. So BMX was helping ease some of that tension because it was giving me an outlet, a connection to people. When I got rid of that community, I had myself, right? There was no therapy. There was no vulnerable space with mom and dad. My friends didn't know how to be vulnerable and support each other. We didn't have open conversations. Mental health wasn't even a thing. If you went to therapy in Clovis, you would have been the crazy kid and something would have been wrong with your parents. So I just started going to parties. The problem with the exposure to parties wasn't the amount of friends that were like, yo, Hoff, get high and let's smoke weed. Because it didn't work that way, the way the commercials told us when we were kids. What I try to explain to people is the actual peer pressure is the unseen world of the emotions and how we respond to what's happening in the world around us. The peer pressure was actually whether or not I was going to be able to sustain myself in a place of loneliness, watching other people engage in an activity that I wasn't taking part in. I tell people, I'm not smoking weed. I'm not going to drink. I'm going to go down to San Diego. I don't do this stuff. But the more I exposed myself to the environment of people partying, the more I was challenged with, can you feel rejection? Can you feel loneliness? Can you feel like you're not a part of something for extended periods of time without caving in? I couldn't.
So let's pause there real quick. So it's like that analogy, like if you play with fire, you're going to get burnt, right? And we talk about this a lot within my company, and it took me a while to recognize this, but like I'm comparing it in my world of real estate investments of, if I surround myself around very successful people that make financial, just huge wealth, right? Mm-hmm. But they're cheating on their wife. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're doing drugs on the side. Eventually, I am going to go into those areas of what they're doing as well. So that's exactly what you're explaining on just like a kid level.
And in recovery, what we say is if you hang out at the barbershop long enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut. Yeah. Because you're going to need one.
Yeah.
And
why do we fight that so much as a kid though? Like
because 75% of your choices are based on feelings. You only make decisions based on feelings.
Because it makes you feel good.
That's right. You want
but
to
I don't
feel
know if it made me feel good. Like when that kid was sagging there was a weird transition. Yeah, but I went from sagging pants to skinny jeans.
It doesn't necessarily make you feel good, but the reason you don't feel bad is because you're a part of something.
You fit in.
You're a part of something.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Can you be a zebra in a room filled with donkeys?
Yeah.
Because the zebra is who's going to get all the attention.
Yeah.
But if everybody wants to be a donkey, well, then look at that guy.
So how are you giving these kids at 10, 12, 14, 16? I mean, producer Matt behind the camera, he was in one of your speeches at Clovis North. How do you give someone so young and immature the confidence, like young Nico, to say like, dude, wearing, skinny jeans and popping pills isn't cool.
Yeah.
Luckily I never popped the pills, but I definitely wore the skinny jeans or I was sagging, right?
Yeah.
How do you relay that message?
So for me, my goal is not to do that.
Oh.
So my goal when I come in,
because there's not just one piece of advice that's
there's not
change you to have the confidence you have.
That's right. And I can't alter a belief system in an individual by having a conversation. I know that from my own space, working with a sports psychologist, when I'm absolutely horsing dudes when I come back to BMX. But my belief system isn't calibrated to the degree that I actually realize that I am that dude who's been able to come back and be here. I belong here. And when I believe that, then the potential manifests itself, right? So I can't do that in a conversation. Sure, maybe a few. My goal is to come in and lay out something that's never been done before. And that is, you're not at risk because you don't have money. You have a different skin color. You come from the opposite side of the tracks. You're at risk if you're spending time alone, keeping your emotions to yourself, and you're not connected to a positive group of people. If you want to really understand the precursor to using substances, then that is, how well are you managing your mental health space? Do you have a vulnerable place you can talk about it? And what does your community of friends look like? Those two things are going to determine whether or not you use substances. Then I try to explain to them the real risk once you start is what you don't get to choose whether you're going to be me or your father or other pieces of your family, just like my pieces of family. You find out after you start.
So back to your story. You're going to parties.
Yep.
What made you
I'm at Shaver Lake. which is cool because everybody listening probably knows where Shaver Lake is.
Yeah.
And everybody's partying, not me, not drinking, not smoking. And I just said, you know, I'm going to do it. Yeah. Steve, let's do it. Smoke me out. Just one time, smoking. It's like 2:00 in the morning. I'm laughing, can't stop laughing. Everybody's like, Hoff, go to sleep. I'm like, I can't. I'm laughing so much right now. I can't control laughing. And I thought to myself, you know what? That wasn't all that bad. But I didn't want to do it every day. I want to focus on going down to San Diego. But before you know it, it became an everyday activity. And that activity at that time was to secure myself from not feeling lonely. It was to secure myself from being left out, right? The activity and the pressure was to connect with these people that I wanted to be friends with, right? Like I yearned for validation. I yearned for acceptance amongst my peers. And the only way that I felt like I was truly connecting at this time was engaging with what everybody else was doing. The mindset wasn't.
So real quick though, so you're connecting with these people that you're smoking pot with, right? Mm-hmm. That's one thing, but you ultimately already had that connection prior with BMX and basketball. Obviously that went away, so now this was a new connection. But was there a part that it like numbed your mental health?
Not weed.
Okay,
So
this beyond us became a hobby.
Yeah, it became a hobby, and then we'll fast forward because this could take 2 hours just talking about these mechanics, right? It was OxyContin.
But what was that scale up real quick without
like from weed to weed, cocaine?
Because this is probably what you talk about the most, right?
Yes.
Dude, I'm only going to smoke weed. Or hey, like for me, like, and we'll get into my story later because I want to talk only about you, but it's like, hey, I'm just going to have one tequila a night because I want to take the edge off from all this work stress and drama and struggle.
Yep. So it's weed. That doesn't work. Makes me anxious, makes me paranoid.
Okay.
Cocaine, loved the rush, but it made me super paranoid, made me super anxious. And I'm already an anxious person and I'm already paranoid because of my anxiety. So those drugs really fueled the stuff I hated about myself.
But is this all the same group as it goes from weed, cocaine, oxy?
Yes.
Because like, for instance, like most business owners that, entrepreneurs are watching this is like, yeah, I drink all the time. And it's like, well, my crowd I don't hang out with doesn't go, do oxy or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm not going to be pulled into that.
Right.
Is that necessarily true? Like, do you need to be an extremist like, like Huberman or these other guys that believe in just no drinking, nothing at all?
No, I don't think so. I think it's mostly about self-awareness. Right. I would take somebody that says, okay, I'm going to have a shot of tequila to take the edge off because I've been so stressed out. My new perspective says, how about we deny the shot and listen to the stress and actually listen what the stress may be telling us? Because if we're curious about that emotion, it may be telling us that we're overextending ourselves in a place of work or life that doesn't serve us and that we need to take a step back and that stress will actually alleviate itself. And that would be in the form of peace or contentness, which is actually what puts us in a better position to be effective in the areas of life that we engage ourselves in, right? So do you need to be an extremist? No, but I think if you can find a balance where self-awareness is really the goal, then you can engage in social activities. You can engage in work to a degree that you're tired or putting in a lot of hours in, but you then also know when it's time to take a step back. Right. Now, I'm not going to do that because right now my body's telling me that I need to rest. Right now, I know that my family needs me because I need to be engaged with them emotionally. They look to me as a father or a mother and that figure as a provider, however your family model is set up. And you're finding yourself operating from a place of empowerment more than you are, hey, I need to check out because I'm overly stressed. So no, I don't think you need to be an extremist. But for me, it was just friends kind of navigating this world of changing the way that we feel, because that's what we do as kids. Then we start trying things that change the way we feel. It grabs a hold of me different than other people. Immediately I start going, whew, this extremism of how I do work, this extremism of how I train in sport, this extremism of how I get involved in things that I enjoy immediately becomes how I use drugs. Because this obsession to how I can alter the way that I feel or change the presence that I hate about myself to a presence that I'm more accepting of self is what leads me into this place where I try OxyContin. And then that was what I tell people, the instant light switch to every problem I had in my life stopping. And I thought to myself, yo, I'm fixed. This is it. Prescribe me this. Give me this drug. no anxiety, no depression, no suicidal ideation. I don't want to sleep anymore because I was addicted to sleep in the beginning. That was my first drug I ever took, I told people, was sleeping, so I didn't have to feel. This drug allowed me to be a part of life, and it allows me to engage with people the way I believe everybody else gets to navigate life. I had a person tell me one time they did OxyContin. They would never do it again because they felt out of control. And I said, well, let me put it to you this way. What if the way you felt when you were on OxyContin is the way I felt sober?
Yeah.
The way you feel sober is how I felt under the influence of OxyContin. We both wanted the same thing. I didn't know how to achieve what you had sober. I found it through drugs. My brain believed, well, then you can just use this drug. Addiction's a choice is what I thought. These guys that came to Clovis High from prison and the other side of the tracks in West Fresno, I'm not like them. My parents are doing this and doing that, or we got this money, and I would never let these things actually happen to me, but that's not how it works. How it worked was when I tried the substance, as a result to a low emotional vibrancy, the drugs offered such a reward to my brain that it said that this is a good thing. You won't get addicted. Just do the thing that's good because it's releasing you from yourself, and that's what you want, is that inner peace. Well, as most of the world knows now, those OxyContins were basically just pharmaceutical grade heroin. And it went from that to an armed robbery in 3 years. Just took me over. I couldn't live without it.
What happened real quick, just because most of the audience here is entrepreneurs. So you high school, about to get $120K, Rancho Santa Fe. It's where I went to college in San Diego. So I know, dude, you hit the jackpot, right? So Oxy just shut that all down.
So I moved down to San Diego when I graduated. Okay. I'm just smoking weed. That's all I'm doing at this time. The guy sits me down at this sushi restaurant and he says, hey, we've got some problems with the company. I want to interview you for a consultant position with this other company called All Bases Covered that I'm a regional manager for. Tim Motz was the CEO of this, who helped start Apple Computers with Steve Jobs, right? This company was big. He interviews me, the job, he says, okay, we'll give $20 an hour as a consultant. Well, this company's not starting. And we go to this one big meeting, and there's these $1 million investors, like a telco owner. And he says, this is my, young kid. He's going to manage the networks. We got the name, the number, the et cetera, et cetera. And nothing ever came of it. He ended up being a Ponzi scheme scam artist. He was Entrepreneur of the Year of California at 23. He invented this VPN box. He got a lot of status amongst the tech community in San Diego over this supposed VPN box. Yeah. And then he says, I'm going to start this wireless internet company. I'm looking for millions of dollars.
So he just started putting the funds.
Putting the funds together. And next thing you know, he uses me as a pawn. Wow. And it's actually going to happen. So while I'm in San Diego, this job isn't working.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a consultant talking to people and managing computers face to face. And I started picking up the drug trade while I was in San Diego. My second cousin was connected with these Catholic Iraqis called Chaldeans. And they were selling pounds of weed and moving it back and forth. And I kind of saw the transactions, the money. Well, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And I'm seeing this and I'm like, oh, I could take this down to Mission Beach Boulevard and start hustling to the college kids. I didn't stay down there very long, 6 months before I came back to Clovis. And that's when I tried OxyContin.
Got it. Okay.
And then that entrepreneurism went to, okay, I'm going to sell.
So do you think that crushed you though? Like not having that success out there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that for a fact because all my friends are watching me leave. I feel like I'm going to be a success and then it doesn't work out. And I have to humbly come back and say it didn't work. And so there was a lot of embarrassment that came with that, but it was out of my control. But I started engaging in the drug culture, and then I started selling weed, then selling cocaine because I could make $2,000 in a night selling cocaine, driving around all night till 3 o'clock in the morning.
So this continued back into Fresno when you moved back?
Oh yeah, well that's when it just got out of control. Yeah. It was because I became that guy that could sell weed to everybody, and then it was like cocaine, and then it was like I could get the best weed, and then I could get the best cocaine because I was constantly trying to find the people that could get me the highest quality product, and I prided myself on that type of thing and still do in a sense with everything else that I do business-wise.
Right? Just a born entrepreneur.
Born born entrepreneur. And, I tried to go to Heald College before everybody knew that was a scam, but I was snorting lines of cocaine off the fucking desk while the guy was giving a lecture. Like, it was out of control, bro. And eventually,
so you just hit the spiral downward.
Just spiral.
Yeah.
I at that point, there was no containment. It was, how do I change the way that I feel from the second I get up until I can make myself pass out?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you were just, what I see it as is you saw this spiral as a numbing mechanism that just made it all go away, and you were okay with that.
But at the time, you're not actually cognitively aware of it.
Okay.
This is all going back through therapy, meditation work, and trying to really understand, because as a young kid, I don't have the brain yet to use logic to understand these decisions. You go back and you look at them, and then you see the motive behind what these decisions actually were. And it was really just all about trying to stabilize myself emotionally. And that's the same for an adult or a young person who's struggling with addiction. It always comes down to emotional regulation. The substance at one point tricked them into believing their stress was no longer stress. Their anxiety was no longer anxiety. The fear or the stuff, the PTSD that they came home with from war is no longer affecting them. It was just a coping skill that they decided to use, but they came home too many nights saying, I'm just going to do a shot of tequila to take the stress off. And then the brain says, you're not allowed to not do that anymore. And once it hijacks your brain and becomes an addiction, you no longer make logical choices.
Yeah, scary shit.
It is.
Yeah. So, as a drug dealer, like we see on movies, right, is some of them live pretty good. What got you to the point that you were homeless for 6 months?
So I was selling drugs to support a pill habit.
Got it.
It was
so
never
most
about
people
making
sell it, make money,
Yeah,
and then
sure.
they live a lavish lifestyle. This was sell to use.
Sell to use.
Yeah.
And what we know neurologically, a reward goes up the time you use drugs. You come down lower than you were before you used. Your body goes back up, but it never goes as high. It comes back down lower, doesn't go back up as high, and it just keeps getting lower and lower, which is why the craving gets stronger, which is why you use more to try and get yourself elevated high. So it was like I couldn't make enough money to support my drug habit. By the peak of my drug habit, 14 Oxycontins a day, maybe a little less than a quarter ounce of cocaine. I stopped smoking weed. Then I started using meth, and it was just, it was $1,000 a day to support my peak habit. Then I couldn't come up with $1,000 a day, and I started using less and becoming more desperate in my decisions. Then I found myself on Motel Drive and Parkside. Then I started seeing myself on the west side in the projects on Martin Luther King in California. And I started putting myself in parts of Southeast Fresno that Clovis kids didn't know anything about and still don't. My nephew, I'm struggling with some of his decisions. And he went on a joyride at 15 years old to Jensen in 99 to go to In-N-Out because he's in Gruthers. And I'm like, bro, you have no idea what's over there between Calwa and the west side of Fresno. On the other side, like, you're in a spot that could get you into big trouble real quick. And trouble over there isn't the trouble you think. It's the trouble you don't come back from.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I don't know how much time we have today because I know you're on the road right after this, but like, even that was elevated with your stories in prison of, the wrong groups, the wrong area that you're in, that you relate to these kids that go and put themselves in. Again, we talk about the environment, and I struggle with that because I have the ability with real estate to go drive any and every location, and I'm kind of questioning, like, when my daughters raise Clovis and trying to raise them correctly, right, is should I drive them to these areas with me to show them the reality of your environment compared to other environments that are out there, so that they're self-aware of, like, just like with your nephew, like, is he aware that, like, if he crossed the wrong path, something really bad can happen, right? And you can give us a little share of your prison story with that, of like, at any moment, like, this sounds fun now, a joyride.
Yeah, but at any moment, things can change.
Yeah.
I think taking individuals to different parts of life are great. My only thing is, especially because I'm so in tune with neighborhoods and how they were built, and redlining, and the country really constructing neighborhoods that were designed to be poverty. There's more liquor stores in those areas because of poverty and addiction, and as long as that stuff fuels, then the education system's not as low. And so a lot of times we can think, hey, this is what life could be for you. But though a lot of those people didn't choose for their life to be that, they were born into these situations where opportunities didn't exist. The scary part about that is when there's poverty, when there's lower socioeconomic status, crime is higher. The intellectual capability of an individual is confined by the groupthink of the home that they grew up in, the neighborhood or the environment that they're at. There is, in some cases with individuals, a low care for life, which means if you step in their zone or you do something they don't like, what they're willing to do to repay you for that is not what you would see in Clovis. They'll shoot you. They don't care about the consequences, right? They don't understand the value of a human life because the environment hasn't allowed them to see that, or belief systems that gangs give them and things like that.
Well, transitioning, was that a similar story to what got you into prison, which was the armed robbery?
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't care about the consequences. It was like, hey,
I needed to get high.
Yeah.
And so then, then I get to prison and you're in this environment that you have no idea what's going to happen. I'm shackled up on a bus going to Wasco State Prison, and they tell you we're at war with the Bulldogs, and it's like, I don't even really know many Bulldogs. What does this mean? Which means you got to fight or kill this Bulldog, or they're going to try and kill you if they get a chance, which is a bit overwhelming at first. Then you get to a prison cell and they start telling you the rules for this prison yard, and the rules are different for every prison yard. It depends on who's running the actual prison yard in terms of inmates. Right. And you start to see these things happen on a moment's notice where, a Bulldog and a white start fighting and they don't stop until they get shot. Yeah. And you're thinking to yourself, what is going on? And my cellmate's like, yo, bro, you ever get in a fight, you don't stop until you get shot. Because if you stop before, that person's going to kill you. Yeah. And you don't want that. The fight will stop when somebody gets shot. But before then, you got to keep going.
Guys, for those who want to learn more about the prison and what Tony went through, he has a really good podcast. What was it called?
Hell Has an Exit.
Hell Has an Exit. Listen to it because he goes into super high detail about prison, which will blow your mind. I don't think people realize, I didn't, until I watched this, the difference between jail, prison, getting arrested. It's a whole different world that is, and it's probably always changing, but at the time that you went, it'll blow your mind. I don't want to get into too much detail
for sure.
On the prison thing, but I do within the prison. So you go, and I've been with my father and family to a lot of, I guess you call it therapy. Al-Anon, right? Is what the family
for
goes
the codependent.
Yeah.
It's for the loved one.
So that was me putting my family in rehab multiple times. And so what I'm going to relate that to is most people, what they call, and it's kind of common sense, when you hit rock bottom, you typically have a transformation. And a lot of people don't ever either figure out that rock bottom and they just die, or they think they hit rock bottom and they try to make a transformation and then they just keep going deeper and deeper with relapses. But this one really stuck out to me. You had a spiritual transformation.
January 21st, 2007.
Yeah. And that was your day after you go to prison or day before?
Day before I get arrested.
Day before. Okay. Let's touch on that. And then there's a message that you receive on your first day in prison.
That's right.
Looking at your ceiling.
That's right. So January 21st, 2007, I had a spiritual experience in Southeast Fresno. If you guys have been to Southeast Fresno by the fairgrounds, there used to be that wall that said, "Please stop painting on our church. God is watching." Right down the street from there was the church that I gave my life to Jesus Christ. It really was what altered my perception of life. And that's what I needed. I needed a perspective shift to change the way I viewed myself and I viewed others that could then become a springboard for how I was going to respond to situations. I get arrested January 22nd on First and Knees on the northwest corner of First and Knees. In the neighborhood back there, there was a house that was up for rent, and I broke into it. And I needed a place to stay warm. It was super cold that night. And I woke up at 2 p.m. Cops were in the house and they arrested me. And 30 days later, I was off to Wasco State Prison When I got to my cell, my cellmate wanted me to lock it up and go PC. He was trying to scare me. And I decided that I wasn't, that I was in this
repeat
place.
that. He wanted you to what?
Lock it up, which is go PC, protective custody. Because he thought that I was like a punk.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a very fragile looking guy at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You say,
I didn't get that in the podcast when you were explaining that story. So like he wanted you to like leave?
Yeah. So if I was scared or quote unquote, if I was a bitch, get out of here. Knock on that door.
So this was your opportunity to like,
to
hey,
bitch out.
Yeah. And like to paint the picture for the audience, like you had a hardcore cellmate.
Yeah. He was a skinhead.
Yeah.
Like swastikas, white power tattooed on him. And so he's trying to test out, yo, is this kid a bitch? Because he looks like one. Right. You know, I'm 20, 23 years old, but I look like I'm 17. I'm a clean cut looking kid. Even at 140 pounds strung out, when I went in, he can still see that, you know, I'm soft looking in the face, whatever. I lay down on my bunk because I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. I got myself here and I'm going to ride this out. And I'm grateful I did, because that quote was what became the blueprint of how I was going to transform my life or understand how this whole thing actually happened. And that quote was, be careful what you think, because your thoughts become your words. Be careful what you say, because your words become your actions. Be careful what you do, because your actions become your habits. Be careful what you make a habit, because your habits become your character. And your character becomes your destiny. And I just kept reading it. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, yo, this makes so much sense. Like, this is me. It's not my dad. It's not my mom. It's not Coach Ford. It's not Mr. Dole. It's not my high school. It's not the cops. It's not the guidance counselors. Like, this is all me. I think, I speak, I do it enough. That's who you are. Who you are, whether you know it or not, is exactly where you're going to a destination. Yeah. That's why I tell people that contact me after they go to my rehab, if you want what I have, all you have to do is learn how to think like I think. Yeah. And if you call me every day, I'll teach you how to think the way that I think, because thinking is really just my perspective. Yeah. My perspective is how I want to respond to a situation. And I always want to respond to a situation today from a place of empowerment. That means there's accountability no matter what. And that accountability allows me to look at a situation and say, how do I grow from this situation? When I saw that quote, it was like, this is it. Yeah. This is where I start. And that was when the 4 goals I felt God was calling to me, came to me, was to race BMX professionally, go to the Olympics, start the Freewheel Project, and become a professional speaker. Yeah. And I started the journey.
See, that's so cool, because in my follow of you throughout our friendship, re-engaging now back a couple months ago when I reached out to you to jump on and hop on my podcast, and then watching your stuff, how that message is so powerful. So for those in the audience, write that down. I did when I heard it. It's in my office. I have a little notepad that I kind of just reference when you're feeling in that spot. But what I admire so much about you, and then I want to see how it relates to these individuals that you're transforming their lives, is your dedication to everything at that point forward is truly admirable. In one of your videos, there's 2 friends you interviewed. One I know personally, the other one I don't. You met in prison. But your motivation and relentless efforts to not give up arguably is probably where it puts you at today, right? And we'll get into habits and what that looked like. And it's interesting, a lot of these habits you formed through prison. Part of, again, if you watch that podcast, you didn't choose to do these habits. You were told to do them, not by the prison, but by the inmates that you had to be part of in order to stay alive. Required you to make your bed, to follow certain guidelines, to work out at the same time. And anyhow, we'll get into that, because we have a influencer speaker guy, that entrepreneur that you and I follow, that says something that you retweeted that's really funny.
Yeah.
But like, it was so powerful, and it gave me the chills when I heard your mom, and this is a true story, guys. His mom visited him in prison, and one of the guards pulled her aside and said, "Hey, is that your son? And she was like, yeah. Like, what's up? She goes like, who's going to be the one to tell him all those dreams that you just mentioned are not going to happen? And she's like, not me. Like,
well, and she told her,
sorry,
who's going to be the one to tell him? Are you going to make us do it, or are you going to do it? Your son is not going to go to the Olympics. They would never let a person like your son participate in the Olympics. And my mom said, it's not going to be me. And that's what moms do, right?
Oh yeah, they're always
when the dads don't go to war with their kids. A lot of times the mom is the one, the mama bear, right? They're their
That's how my mom is. Yeah,
the protector. You don't tell me what my son can't do.
Yeah.
And my mom had that attitude, but also they had no idea where I was at mentally at that time and what I was preparing to do and the effort that I was putting in to change my life. And I think that's for everybody, right? Like there are individuals listening to this podcast that may be brand new in real estate. Well, you're not quite there yet, but mentally you're already there. And because of that, you're doing the things daily that's going to get you to a place to being a high revenue sales agent. The people right now don't see it. So they might laugh and make fun of you or think that you can't do it. But if you've accepted the mental capacity it takes and the thinking of the high performers and you're on your way to creating those habits, then you're already there. Time just hasn't caught up yet. And that was where I was at.
So what year was this that you set up your mind that those are going to be your 3 goals?
2007.
Okay. So 2007.
I'm in prison. 2007. I set these goals and I started the process. Wow. And it wasn't a linear line.
Yeah.
It wasn't like,
no,
I'm going to the Olympics every day. I'm making my bed.
No, we can talk about all the ups and downs, which most people think it was just a streamline upwards from, you actually do go to the Olympics in what year? 2016. So 2007 to 2016, and you achieved all your goals plus 100 more that most of them you're not even aware of that I've recognized through watching you. That's what I talk about all the time on our podcast of entrepreneurship. But I never got into this detail, which I want to get even deeper on, is like, look, it just takes time. Yes. But it also takes commitment and ownership. And that's what I respect about you the most, because not only did you hit those 3 goals, which we'll get into, there was also another goal in your journey, because I went deep in your social media, PH Wellness, which we'll talk about at the end. You set that goal, and look here where you're at today. You told me another goal before we jumped on the podcast that you're going to open a bigger facility, and then I'm going to re-interview you in probably 5 years and that facility is going to be open, right?
It will be, yes.
Dude, the power of putting it out there and owning what you desire to do is the start, right? And then we can talk about all the action items and the ups and downs and never giving up, never quitting, never stop working, outwork, outlast, all that stuff. But, when you set those three goals... 4. Okay, so it's 4.
Yeah, don't sell me short.
All right, my bad. But what was the trajectory from there? So it's like for the audience and even self, right? It's really hard. It's like, okay, get these guys in here to set 4 goals. They set them. Now, what is really going to change someone? And I'm sure you get asked this all the time by your huge audiences that you speak to. Is like, hey, Hoff, I got 4 goals, and I'm going to own it just like you did, and I'm going to do it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, do you just say, well, go show me, right? Or what's your steps from there?
So the first step is boundaries. So you want to achieve something, you have to have boundaries for that. And I define boundaries by value and safety. Safety is emotionally, safety is also could be safety, and then value. And so you create boundaries and parameters around these boundaries. You start letting go of people that don't provide value to you. You start doing things that provide higher value to you or create your value to go up. You stop going to people, you stop doing things, you stop seeing people. It's the people, places, and things that you change that have to change for you to be able to achieve whatever it is that you set yourself out to. And you have to define what those boundaries look like. For me, it was brushing my teeth every day. I couldn't brush my teeth every day. You get into my story, I couldn't do it. So one of the first pieces of me creating value for myself was learning how to brush my teeth every day, then learning how to make my bed because they were making me do it, learning how to organize my stuff because in an 8x12, I could still lose things. And then it was getting up in the morning. And as I started to simple tasks, right? We set these goals for ourselves and we think that we have to earn a certain number of sales that first year without recognizing that if you just grow $300,000 in sales or $2.5 million in sales, that is a step forward than where you were before, and that's the actual progress you're looking for. So I started focusing on this micro process. And over time, as I got good at all of these micro items, I started to feel my value go up. Now I feel better about myself. Now I have more confidence. I know I'm going the right direction because now I'm doing all these things that I wasn't doing, and then momentum kicks. And then once the momentum kicks, you start to see things coming at you without having to put in such high intentional efforts and focus into these things because you've set up the process of what the daily life looks like, which is what Alex Hormozi challenges. But at the essence, it's the process of doing the work. You have to create boundaries for how you're going to go out and achieve those things. And then you have to be disciplined. It's the key.
But what about everyone talks always about those simple steps. They work every time, which they do, right? Of making your bed, brushing your teeth, working out, ice bath, sauna, etc., right? Is there a certain strategy to those compared to others? Because what I'm going to get into that most people don't talk about is what happens if failure slapped you in the face again, right? And maybe it did. I'm sure it did through that process. Yeah. But how'd you cope with it then the past, right? Where the past, like, that job in Rancho Santa Fe broke you, where now I'm doing these simple tasks that, you can't lose making your bed. You can't lose brushing your teeth. That's right. Right. So that's all, the book, and I know you were doing this before that book, but making your bed, it's a simple win. Do you think it was those simple wins that led up to that moment where you did have a larger failure in life that was like, okay, well, I wanted all these, had a step back here of a failure. Now I keep moving forward.
Yeah. So for me, it's always about baseline perspective. And where's my baseline exist? Baseline for me exists getting out of bed, brushing my teeth, organizing my stuff, walking my dog, and going to the gym. As long as I have those things, then I know that I'm at baseline right in the middle. The other thing is when I'm up, what is my perspective? What does this mean when I'm up? What does it mean when I'm down? At the end of the day, as long as I have baseline perspective, it doesn't matter if I'm up or it matter if I'm down. A lot of people get up and they start winning. They spend too much money because they think they're going to be up forever. Some people are down and think because I'm down right now, I've lost it. I don't have the same touch. I'm never going to make it. When the reality is we got to create baseline perspective and we got to keep ourselves at baseline as much as possible. That's why Kobe Bryant was so special, right? The job's not done yet. I'm not going to go up here and I'm not going to go down here. I'm going to stay right here. And that is, what is my job as Kobe Bryant and how do I execute that on a daily basis? And so for me, it really came down to getting to a baseline perspective and knowing that something bad is going to happen, something challenging is going to happen. And when things start going good and I have that momentum, don't let that overtake what you have to do on a daily basis and trick you into thinking you're in a better position than you are. And so when I was challenged, when I got out, when I blew my knee out and lost my ability to race my bike again, really had what I had to focus on. Yes, I'm devastated. Like my family will tell you, I'm devastated. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I see everything that I had worked so hard for in prison. It's October of 2011. 2 years later, I'm racing at the Olympic level. I made my first year back on a bike. I won 5 races at the lower pro division, moved up to the Olympic level. United States of America invites me down to the Olympic Training Center. Like, it's all happening, bro. Like, it's happening. And I could feel it, like goosebumps. Like, I'm on trajectory. Like, this is real. I'm engaged. You can't break me from this absolute structured routine that I've created starting in prison. And I was watching it. These other athletes, they're weak. They don't know what it's like to be where I've been. Like, they can't create the same structure. They can't be grateful for the idea that getting up and doing the same thing every day is a blessing. And so they're being distracted by all these things, which is why my trajectory is taking me right up to where they are at so fast. And then boom, no, you don't get to go. My old self comes in. This is why you didn't put effort into things when you were a kid. You're never going to be lucky. Every person that's successful in my mind is lucky. They've had a hand up. They have rich parents, trust funds, some type of energy is with them that makes them be successful. You don't get to have that because something is wrong with you and it's not meant for you. That's my old self. I can think that, feel that.
The victim mentality.
The victim mentality. But I could also recognize that this thought, this perspective is not going to serve me. What happens if I continue here is using, drinking, and trying to escape from myself, and I just prolong.
So you had that thought?
Oh, yeah. And I could do it, but I knew if I do it, I'm going to prolong the misery. Right. And I cannot go back to that lifestyle. My community of people, don't worry, Hoff, you're going to overcome this too. You're going to figure this out, bro. Stay with it. So I started my nonprofit, started coaching BMX athletes. It's like around 2012.
This was the Freewheel Project. Yep. Yeah.
And my whole thing is something good is going to come from this. This didn't happen for no reason. My family and I just talked about it. Had that not happened, I would have continued to race a bike. I probably wouldn't have PH Wellness. I would not have started my nonprofit. And I would not have created the speaking career that I have that's helping thousands of people every single year, maybe even more now with my TED Talk being in every rehab in the world. And that needed to happen to me to get me to change directions.
Powerful, man. It hits home for me, right? And I don't want to go into too much detail about self, but dude, it's been tough lately as an entrepreneur because you're, from the outside appearance, everyone's like, there's a bunch of real estate drama with commissions and companies buying out companies lately, and people are coming in being like, dude, you're absolutely crushing it, right? And we're doing really good. Like, I'm so proud of my team and all the people here. But dude, as an entrepreneur, because we do other things besides just real estate brokerage, it's a lot. My wife's probably going to kill me for saying this, but like last week, and I'm going to pull this all back home and it will relate, but last week, I've never seen my wife like literally break down to basically tears, right? She's a very strong-willed Italian-German woman who, from the outside appearance and even inside appearance is just a total hardcore rock badass. And people know that. But she broke to me, and it was because she's opening up, she has multiple companies, she's got salon, her own personal business. She's got now this boutique of clothing. She got a hair extension line, and it takes a lot to build and do that next step. So what I'm getting to, and even for myself, like, you sell houses, you sell land, you do deals, and you make piles of money, and then you reinvest it, right? And basically, I'm relating this to you spent all that, call it funds, right? Because I used to think, money as in dollars control you. It's not that, it's wealth. Wealth is knowledge, wisdom, experience, etc. But you spent all that hard work and knee blows out, done. Wife spends all this cash, effort, things are getting really tough, permits are getting denied, inventory's piling up of hundreds of thousands of dollars, still not open. And it's like, most people just want to give up.
Yep. Most people do give up.
That's what I'm getting to. So it's like, when you have that feeling, guys, it's totally normal. And the most, successful people I know, and I was listening to another friend of mine's podcast, Scott Harkey has a podcast, Rebranding, talking about entrepreneurship. And it was really cool. I want to share it with you because he said like habits or experiences that very successful entrepreneurs go through. The first one is like addiction because they're addicted to their craft, but it's that point of, they call it bankruptcy well, I'm just going to leave it at bankruptcy because there was another thing, but like basically your knee bankrupt you.
Absolutely.
Right? My wife, is, quote unquote, running out. She's about to be bankrupt, right? Yeah. From an emotional perspective, physical, doesn't even have to be financial.
And let's just define bankruptcy as the internal conversation. What am I supposed to do now?
Right. And dude, there's so many people feeling that, even though the external look fine, right? As a child, you were bankrupt of your emotions. As an adult, you're bankrupt of your knee. Yep. So now let's dive past of pushing through that thing, which I had to rally with my wife, and I'm sure you had a rally of your community.
Yep.
It is going to be so much brighter if we power through this. Yeah. Right. And I don't know if it's the gritty hardcore of, hey, don't be a coward, get through this is what's going to make you sharp. I don't know. It's the whole,
it's not a bootstrapping mentality, right? Like that's not, to me, that's not what it is. To me, and I'll explain it this way. I had a breakthrough with my sports psych, a good weekend. I made a main with all the best athletes in the world at the highest level. I'm going to Orlando, Florida with this new breakthrough that when I talked to him, I told him, I know I can beat Mark Willers, a personal friend of mine, national champion from New Zealand, Olympian 2 times. And I said, if I just get my best gait, I can beat this guy. And he said, I'm going to challenge you on that. I said, why? And he goes, because what happens if you don't get your best gait? He goes, for a split second at the very beginning of the race, you know whether or not you're getting your best gait. And if you don't, your effort backs out because you instantly believe you're no longer capable. You're not open-minded to winning a different way. He goes, what if Mark doesn't get his best gait? What if the guy next to you completely flops his gait and you just get a decent gait? That should be enough to win. So when I say it's not about bootstrapping, it's about being open-minded to finding different ways of creating opportunities with great outcomes.
That's awesome. I love that.
When I blew my knee out, I have to find a different opportunity. Why did this happen? I'll be honest with you. From January to this day right now, I'm down $200,000 compared to last year as a speaker. For the last 3 months, I've been losing sleep, doubting whether or not I'm supposed to be a speaker anymore, trying to figure out how I'm going to fill the financial loss that I'm feeling. Like it's like money is just like pouring out. You create lifestyles. You're reinvesting it. You create lifestyles around the finances that you have coming in. And I've had to sit back and use the same skill I used when I blew my knee out. Why am I in this position? Something is supposed to happen differently than where I'm at right now. What I've been doing since 2015 to build up this very successful speaking career is clearly not working anymore. Something has to change. I have to pivot, change directions, and find where there's an opportunity to advance the skill that I already have. Should I walk away from speaking? No. There's nothing that indicates I should be walking away from speaking. I think I should be sitting down and doing more podcasts with adult audiences, letting people know that I'm not just a drug speaker. There's a very, very intricate thing happening inside this head that understands success, understands resilience, perseverance, compassion, empathy, growth, business, and that may put me in a totally different audience. But if I continue to do the same thing, I may be only speaking to kids for the rest of my life. And not that I don't love kids, but I'm 40. I'm going to time out soon. They're not going to want to listen to me soon. So it's like there's an opportunity somewhere in this loss. The good thing is...
So do you think at the moment you became self-aware of that?
No. Hindsight's always 20/20, bro.
So you kind of got blindsided by, I'm going to, cheat to the audience and fast forward for us. But see, I in a perfect world, you think of it, I became self-aware of this. So I started putting this in the environment and then an opportunity came. So you kind of pushed off the whole self-awareness and just leaned more into public speaking. And then let's fast forward to you come across a friend that gave you some very strong advice, which is, again, part of being part of the right community, where he's like, I'll let you tell a story, but...
So I met Chris Herron. Most of us here in the Valley know Chris Herron. He was a hero for Fresno State basketball, and his 30 for 30 obviously has a big, huge piece here in Fresno. As a basketball player, he was doing very well as a speaker, and he was really kind of the light in a tunnel of like, you can do this. And I believed I had a story that was equally as powerful, and I started to replicate the things that he was doing. But I met with him because he had started his treatment center, and that meant he was going to be backing out of speaking. Well, I'm 100% in speaking, and so I'm like, yo, bro, like, what do you do with the people that, one, can't afford you, and what do you do with the events that you don't want to go to? I'll pay you a commission on those if you kick them back my direction. And so we're at his rehab, and he asked me a very simple question. You married? And I was like, no. And he's like, you got a girlfriend, kids? And I was like, no. And he just said, you're never gonna. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, you gonna travel 250 days a year? How long are you gonna do this, Hoff? What's the plan? And I never thought about it. I mean, I was saving money. Like, I was spending far less than I was making. And I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, this is what has shown itself to be the bigger picture. And he just turned around and he said, this is what you're supposed to do, Hoff. And he's like, you probably start one today, don't you think? And I was like, no way, dude. Like, I don't have the name recognition that you have. I can't do this today. Where do I even start? So then I started speaking every day after that with the idea that I was going to start a treatment center, because I could not speak and be away from family and actually have a family that was functioning and thriving and intimate and valuable if I was constantly on the road serving others, which I love serving others, but I couldn't sacrifice my entire life to others in such a degree that I would be content with the outcomes of myself. And so that was the transition from, okay, I'm a speaker to I'm going to soon open up a treatment center, and that will be my retirement plan, in that I will be able to exit speaking, focus on a core group of people that are just like me, who I can give my brain to, which is everything I've learned, my experience, strength, and hope of how I've gotten to this position, so that they too could then change their life and find their own balance in their life without having to drink or use or be subjected to an addiction that controlled everything about their life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And within that, like, the audience for you guys, I'm sure it's not like, okay, brilliant idea. And then I asked you before we jumped on, but was like, hey, dude, like, I saw you make that goal and commitment, and you obviously are achieving it and doing very well. Yep. But then I still see you're traveling 260 days out of the year. And so we just had that conversation of like, hey, bro, what are you doing? Like, you committed to this, and it just, guys, it doesn't happen overnight.
No. And I'm very meticulous about how I set things up financially. Everything is a business decision in my mind. Marriage is a business decision. The house I purchase is a business decision. I'm not thinking about today. I'm thinking about 10 years. And where does this decision put me 10 years financially and business?
So that point is that you're building out PH to slowly
remove myself from speaking. So what I'm looking,
it's going to be a gradual progression.
Yeah. So what I'm looking to do is wait to the moment that PH completely supplements the income that I was making from speaking. At that point, I don't have to make any concessions to my lifestyle, which isn't super lavish outside of my fashion going to basketball games, right? And so I needed to replace that to the degree that if I switch, I'm not putting myself in a deficit. And then at that point, any growth in PH Wellness is then the bonus that speaking led me up to. And so while I'm making investments, it sets me back in the original part of that investment. But I stay engaged in both streams to build up that nest egg that I was at when I made that original investment. And then I start to plan how I'm going to move back out of the one and let the one start to take its a dominating role in my life. And so,
guys, that's super wise, because this is what a lot of the audience doesn't hear, right? You listen, I'm a big podcaster. I know you aren't, which it blows my mind of how wise you are, how intelligent you are, how well-spoken you are, which is basically through the time you've put in. But it's when you set a goal, as in like PH, some people, and I call them the unicorns, transition right away, fully right away, and successful right away. Mm-hmm. And those are basically the only stories you hear. What Tony's describing is how it should be. He recognized, I have this goal. He made the initial start. He's putting in the time and work upon what's available and appropriate with his life and lifestyle and his family and friends. But he still has to do the day-to-day operations, because he's smart enough to recognize it takes this to build that. Right? So like, for instance, the calls, the smaller listings, the smaller flips that we do, the smaller apartment complexes, those all add up to the bigger deals. I can't just totally release them. Some people like Hermosi is like, dude, those are distractions. Like, you can only do one thing really good. And just like the tweet I was going to bring up with Hermosi, just while we're on his topic, was, people were making millions before they started their morning routine, which I want to get to real quick before I forget, because I already forgot. Dude, it was mind blowing, because I've been prepping this mentally for you, because I've seen you been making your bed and brushing your teeth for the last, since you were out of prison, right? And then you retweeted it, and I was like, dude, that kind of goes against what you do every day. But now it all fucking makes sense. And I'm going to go back to your story. That's just mind blows me, because I never thought about it this way. Highs, lows, standards and basics. You do it because you're always going to have that basic, I'm not going to call it basic because that sounds weak, right? You always have that consistent
Dependability.
that you're performing on day in and day out because no one can take that away from you. And at any point, anyone can take your highest of highs and your lowest of lows away from you, but no one can take this. So you're not doing the making the bed, the saunas, the workouts, the ice baths to make millions. You're doing it because you know that what you mentally need to achieve those wins and stability in your life
Is baseline, because I can depend on that. And like you said, nobody can take that from me. And my personal space and my bed, my room, my personal hygiene, those are things that I choose to do every single day that nobody can take from me because I can't control, like you said, the up or the downs. That's why I'm okay with what Alex says. It really triggers a lot of people that are big into their morning routines. And I love his brain because he thinks so much deeper beyond. Is it the making the bed that made you a millionaire? Or was it that you did all the cold calls and the prospecting and knocked on people's doors and sent out the mailers so many times that people started responding and you started getting those opportunities that were the small house in Southeast Fresno to some of these bigger ones in other areas, and you started making more profits? Because that's what actually makes you the money, is doing the work in the field that you want to be successful in. But for me, I want to know that emotionally when I get home, I have baseline perspective that when I lay my head down, I remove work, I remove results, and I focus on gratitude for what I do have. And as long as I'm in a place of gratitude, then I can make a decision logically what needs to be done better. Not because I'm high, not because I'm low, but because I'm at baseline perspective, which really is the umpire's view from behind the plate. I can see both sides of the field. I can see every single player, and I can see the balls that's coming to the batter and where it goes off the bat. And I understand what's happening on the field. And that's the view that I want. I don't want the sweet view. I don't want the first base view because I can't see what's behind me. Baseline is my ability to see from behind the plate the entire field, make a decision there.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So I'm going to wrap up with one last story because I know you got to run off to your...
You're good. We're good.
Okay. The way you're setting up PH, for those who don't know, PH Wellness, as Tony, the H is for Hoffman, P is for Matt Paz, which is your partner. You have, I don't think he's necessarily a partner, maybe he is, but there's a third guy. And I think this is really important for the audience to know because I can kind of relate now that I was sharing with you. You said when Chris gave you this idea, but there's one dot that's I truly find different, right? And the difference was, look, we can put people in facilities and we can give them treatment and we can educate them and we can support them. But then what do they do after that? And I find that so powerful. I relate it to two things that are very deep to me is death. I need to go to more therapy for this, which I'm now like super vulnerable to admit anything. And it looks like you are too, and have been ever since that, moment that you transformed. Is death rattles me. And basically because just you have vivid memories of all your life events and the dates, the times, the moments, the feeling. That same traumatic trauma for me is my father's death. And I don't think I fully accepted it. I'm aware of that. I need to work towards it. But when death happens, in any instance, I just had two very tragic local deaths. One was a car accident. One was suicide of high school friends I went to high school with. People give you instant gratification of apologetic, all this feeling, right? Just like maybe these individuals that are coming in your treatment facility, and I'm going to wrap this home, is after that, probably a week, life goes back to normal. So I'm relating this to these individuals that you did differently that we'll touch on to my experience of death that I'm, very sensitive to is, now everyone goes back to, being normal, but, Dad's birthday, Father's Day, big moments in my life, my marriage, both my kids' birth, my dad's not here for. They don't know what that do. And like everyone forgot about it after that. Just like these individuals, they go get treated. They quote unquote recover. But what do they do after that? So you said, I am not going to create, treatment center without that solution. So walk us through that real quick, just for the audience.
Matt Paz called me during the pandemic, right when I was moving to Dallas. And he said he wanted to start a treatment center. And I said, I know a lady that could help you do that. And he's like, nah, bro, we're starting a treatment center. And this is Matt, totally, if you ever get to know him. And I was like, nah, bro, I'm saving my money to start my own thing. Like I can't start this treatment center without having a career thing. Like we have to make sure that when they get out of treatment, they have a pipeline of opportunity that gives them hope and belief that they can leave all of this behind and start a new life. And he was like, you need to meet Barry. And I was like, who's Barry? And he's like, he's another partner of ours. And he's like, he owns a nationwide staffing agency. He's been doing it for 20 years. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, why don't you fly out to California, bro? Let's meet. So I flew out to California. We met in Long Beach at Barry's house. And in that moment, I realized, I don't think I'm supposed to start a treatment center by myself, right? And I started to see this absolute alignment of confirmation of circumstance happening in my life, where it was too good to deny that I think I'm supposed to go in partnership with these guys. We had an alignment with all these things. And then we didn't have a name. We didn't have anything else other than we knew Barry had a skill, Matt had a passion and skill, and then Tony had also a skill, and that we could bring those three together. Another friend of mine also came in as kind of an angel silent investor, but we felt that we could come together with this energy that other treatment centers didn't have. Most treatment centers owners aren't involved. They're not doing group sessions or one-on-one with clients. They're not down there every day of the week, working out with clients and creating culture with your employees and showing that, hey, this just isn't a business for us. We truly are invested in these people that are coming to this place. And with the fitness component that we have at the treatment center, that kind of separated us from the competition, if you want to call it that. And then Barry comes in with this career piece. And then, I'm on the road. I don't listen to music much in the car. I spend a lot of time meditating and thinking about myself and my feelings. And I was in Kentucky, and I was merging onto a road, and it had the merge arrow. And I was like, oh, that's the name of the nonprofit, Merge Opportunities. We're going to help individuals merge into the lane of quote unquote normal society by providing the opportunities for them to have a career. And, Barry shared great news. We just helped somebody who had gotten out of prison earn a $65,000 job with recovery benefits or with benefits, 401k, everything that they need to stabilize themselves. This guy had multiple felonies. Nobody was going to hire him, but because Barry had relationships with the company and believed strongly in this guy's story and who he was, he said, hire this guy. He's legit. Yeah. And we got him that job. And that's what we're trying to do. We don't have a ton of people taking advantage of that pipeline, but it's a pipeline, right? It's a pipeline that we are building out. Yeah. Barry's focused on that on the side, while Matt and I are really focused on kind of the culture of PH Wellness. Yeah. We just pride ourselves so much on culture and professionalism. Just the way I do everything else is the way we've done PH. When we came together, I said, Matt,
Tony's the best dressed man I know by far. And just like your image yourself, your brand and your company are the same, and your partner's company.
And that's what I told him. I said, Matt, I want clinical and I want marketing. Yeah. Those are mine. I want to control how we look, and I want to control how people feel from our employees based on how we're going to serve their needs. And the reviews online, we don't have employees leaving reviews. These are people that have come to 24 treatment centers that said they've never been to a place like ours. Vets that have said, this is the thing that changed my life. That's the biggest reward. That's the biggest paycheck. Because if you're doing that, then everything else will follow.
That's amazing, man. So I'm going to conclude with this one, and it's probably controversial and hard to answer. And the reason I ask it is because I share with you a little bit. I'm not necessarily in a similar field, but I have a bunch of rentals. Our podcast is going to come on after this, clips are released. But I told you about Project Rebound here in Fresno State. We, through our rental portfolio, house incarcerated people. Okay. And we got into a little bit of detail of why it touches me so much is because I have no judgment to any individual in life.
I appreciate that too, by the way.
Yeah, and that's what I'm touching on. That's sensitive and controversial. Is, do you believe everyone deserves a second, third, fourth, fifth chance? Right? Because we talked about that Tony in the streets. We talked about you coming out, getting an opportunity. We talked about these people who are coming out and entering into PH Wellness. These people coming out, renting one of our REimagined houses through Project Rebound. I mean, I've heard their stories, and they're very touching. And I love all the individuals in my rentals and part of that project, because not only are they got rewarded good behavior, they get the scholarship. They're not only attending school full time, some of them are double majors. They're getting full time jobs. Same thing what you're doing. Yep. But this is the image I want to break or talk on, is like, you drive down those streets we mentioned in Fresno. You can't just look at a homeless person, right, and be like, that person deserves better, and look at all of them, in Fresno, San Francisco, you name it. Like, some people want to change and have the opportunity to change, but you can't save everyone, nor does everyone deserve that opportunity or chance. I mean, sure. I think they deserve it from a life perspective, yeah. But maybe they're not at that time where they're willing to accept it or want to accept it.
Yeah. Complex question.
Yeah.
I think we need to understand, if we're going to use homeless population or even the prison population, there are individuals that deserve a life free of self-destruction. They struggle with mental illness and have schizophrenia or extreme personality disorders that will inhibit them from being able to fill out a resume, fill out an application, get a job, sustain themselves, and support themselves. We should have institutions for them, and they should be placed there, because as we have proper care as a society, we should hold ourselves accountable to giving them a higher standard of life, not the freedom to do whatever they want because we have compassion for their stories, right? Because we're better than leaving them on the street. Just like we've learned we're better than just locking people up and putting them in jail. Well, the reality is, there are many people on the street that have those stories that do have the capacity to make changes, but we may not be holding them accountable in a sense that actually creates that change for them. Now, does everybody deserve a second, third, fourth, fifth chance? For me personally, I do believe that. And that was a struggle for my girlfriend and I in the very beginning, because a lot of times people will poke and prod on like what's going on in my head. And she's like, so you're telling me that if you had a kid and somebody sexually abused that kid, that you would forgive them? And I said, I have to. No, I can't do that. I can't. There's no way. You're telling me that you think they should get out of prison and have another chance. And I said, I got another chance. People didn't think I could change. Do I think that act would absolutely crush me as a human being? I do. But I also think that if there was a system and a process in place for this individual in which they proved they were on a pathway of change, they should be given that opportunity to change and show that they're no longer that person. The greatest mentor in my life was a guy who committed murder. He's been out of prison, served 21 years, been out of prison over 10 years, works for the city of Sacramento. He's different. He's done the work to say that, you know what, I made a mistake when I was 20 or 28 years old. Does everybody deserve that chance? I think so, but I also think that there has to be accountability systems in place, that a person doesn't just get handed the opportunity. You achieve the opportunity through incentive-based programs that say, if you want to level up into opportunity, you have to complete this program. You have to show up for this. You have to do these things. And then, in my opinion, you deserve that chance. You earn it, then you deserve it. If you don't like what you're getting, you get what you deserve. And if you don't like it, you need to do something different so you get something different. And that's the way I see it.
That's amazing. Great answer, man. Good way to wrap this up. I love you, man. I appreciate your courage that you've always had, right? And that you're showing now more and more, and being vulnerable with us and the world. To that last question, you're a true, to show to your girlfriend, not to stir up the drama, yeah. Right? Is you're the true example of that, right? And people unfortunately only hear the the viral stories or the famous stories of like, Killer Mike's Bagels and Bread, right? Of a guy who's incarcerated that makes change. There's a lot of people who have made really good changes in life because they got the right treatment. They were given the right opportunity. They were put in the right environment. So there's so much that I've learned from being friends with you. I appreciate your friendship. I'm excited to watch your journey as it continues and all your successes. And we're here for you, supporting you, always have been. It was a little bit more silent. Hopefully now we can be a little bit more vocal. For those who want to be involved, just like I am in Project Rebound and hopefully get involved with PH Wellness, where, is there social platforms, websites? Your location is out of,
We're in Riverside. We're in Riverside County, just on the outskirts. We have a 4.5 acre property. We'll be licensed for 18 beds here shortly. We're a detox and residential treatment. So the first 30 days, which we would call stabilization. You can find us at phwellness.com. There's admission numbers on there. If you know somebody that's struggling with addiction, we will absolutely contact you personally. I'm heavily involved in the organization, and so is my business partner. You can find me on Instagram at Tony M. Hoffman. I have TikTok. If you're a TikToker out there, Tony M. Hoffman. But send me a message if you have questions about anything, especially mental health or addiction related. I'm accessible. I answer all the questions.
And guys, when he says he answers every message, he does.
I really do my best.
To millions of people.
Kids are always blown away by that. They're like, dude, you actually answered. I'm like, this is my life. It's not a paycheck. Like, I did this in the beginning and I'm going to do this at the end. Is I truly just want people to experience the freedom of self-destructive and self-limiting thoughts and behaviors and know that there's a way out.
No, dude, you're definitely worth following. You have a great following already. It's underappreciated, your content. So follow Tony. Instagram's great. You're not only going to get a bunch of wisdom, but if you want fashion advice, I mean, just this guy's swag is...
I've toned it down these days.
So anyhow, hopefully you guys can follow and subscribe to our channel, the REimagined podcast. To conclude, the REimagined is kind of going with this in line, right? This we hope that people can reimagine their experience. It really started in the investment world. We're heavy into flipping houses here in the Valley, and I had to take complete ownership of that because at first it wasn't enough to feed my ego. But we want to reimagine any experience, whether it comes from addiction and this judgment of past mistakes, that you can reimagine the person and individual you are, or the entrepreneur and investor or realtor that you want to become. Hopefully individuals can reimagine, who they want to be and what they want to become. So
that makes it more real and more relatable, because everybody has a story that they bring to a table. We just bring it to a certain table, and your table is investment with real estate. But you got to know that everybody comes with a story, and we can achieve beyond our struggles in whatever area we design for ourselves. So finding the people that do that I love that. And I appreciate you really bringing me on. When you reached out to me, I was like, dude, this is cool.
We could talk all day. I think we went way beyond our time limit, but dude, it's so much fun. We'll have a episode 2 soon when you're in town. Maybe I'll come visit one of your centers, because I hope you open up one in Fresno. I know a lot of people struggle here in the Valley.
Yeah, we could have talked about that. We're being patient if that happens. There's just some unique dynamics here.
I'd love to be involved, even if it's just time, I'm willing to dedicate time. So cool, man. Thanks.